Hey, everybody. Before we get started, first of all, big thank you to all of you guys, whether you're listening, whether you bought some merch, or whether you are a big ol' Patreon subscriber over there, Heroes of Vetera. If you haven't checked out our merch store or the Patreon stuff we got, which includes, kind of exclusive content as well as early access, then pop on over. We got some links in the description. But in the meantime, let's roll on into TABTA. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to TABTA, the adventure behind the adventure for the Seventh Valkyrie, where we watch one man go from total obscurity to maybe 7 seasons in a movie, and maybe more. Or maybe we'll just find the, the power of friendship along the way. Hi, I'm your host, Colin Sharp, founder, creator, voice of the Seventh Valkyrie. And now that all the intro stuff is out of the way, what's going on, guys? You probably saw that the title of this episode of TABTA is called Processing the Rage. And up until about a week ago, literally right after I recorded the last edition of TABTA, I had a lot of rage. And I think a lot of people around the world right now do. We are in the midst of, as a species, really reckoning with how our future looks, and we're reckoning with these incredible new technologies that, as a whole, we aren't prepared to understand. Like, we're all big tribal apes, and we're not that far evolutionarily removed from, being apes, in the grand scheme of things. Obviously, we have created tons, but in the words of Brene Brown, we're not thinking machines that feel, we're feeling machines that think. And people, and one feeling that I was processing in the aftermath of what I would call a very bad decision, and perhaps a poorly informed decision, when it comes to politics in the U.S. Some people were very emotional, and made emotional decisions, and I was very mad. There are a lot of people in a lot of communities that I have deep connections to, that are, had been cast as second-class citizens, had their rights threatened, and intended to be removed. I am not a big fan of injustice. I'm not a big fan of not punishing people for their crimes. I think that rule of law is important. These used to all be pretty standard things, but we as a society are kind of reckoning with this world where, we all kind of were like, democracy, it's great, we love democracy. And then, it got big and unwieldy, and now people are kind of thrashing out and looking for things. Anyway, I don't need to get into explaining politics to all you guys. Everybody has been watching with bated breath, and the next, years to come will be uncertain and full of lots of people talking about that. So I'm not going to focus too deeply on why and how it happened, but I am going to talk a little bit about processing some of the rage that I felt. There was a time where, so I was very fortunate, I have a little bit of flexibility, and right in the aftermath of what was a very harrowing and shocking decision for a lot of people, that the country made, I left the country, and I just, I was uncertain. I was, feeling really adrift, and then that turned into anger, and I felt that, in the pursuit of justice and in the pursuit of resisting what I think will be a very hard and destructive set of years, I felt like, I felt that the reason that this had all happened was because we forgot the damages and the destruction and the pain, and the reality of 2016 to 2020. And I felt like, I've got to stay mad enough that everybody around me and everybody who I encounter is reminded of the fight that we're in, and that we don't just, kind of let things slide. And over time, I realized that
people do move on and we have to face the new reality. And I was still kind of holding on to like, no, we just need to like reject it. We need to, if we all get angry enough, then we'll reject reality. And I was taking it out on myself. I was taking it out on my family. I was taking it out on the people around me. And I stand here before you today after several conversations with, some of the people in my life who I think are the most wise and most experienced and most thoughtful. And there's a lot of anger still. There's a lot of fury and being pissed off that there are people out there who would, stand behind people who are rapists and Nazis, and would stand behind people who are like threatening the rights of women and the autonomy of minority people and treating everybody like trash, all while lying and stealing and cheating. And there are people like that in my family who, and at the same time, like we live in in a world where the pursuit of truth has become very clouded, and people are, people don't know what the truth is, and so they're resorting back to their feelings. And I'm disappointed in a lot of the people who didn't have the capacity. I'm not disappointed in people who are struggling so hard that they couldn't, lift their head above the struggle for long enough to even try to decipher the giant mass of misinformation. I'm not really that upset even about the people who were, just scared and kind of followed along. I was really disappointed in the people who I thought had the information, but, chose to, I don't know. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that too hard, but I just, I stand here because I realize, it's been a week since then, and I've had a lot of time to think, and it has turned into more disappointment, and it has turned into a more kind anger, if that makes any sense, because the people who stood up for civil rights were kind in their anger. Nelson Mandela was angry but he was kind and in the way that he presented things, because there's a billion quotes, like only darkness can't drive out darkness, only light can do that. You can't, as frustrating as it is for people who have given in to violence and anger and rage and ignorance, as much as it is tempting to try to fight that, as I saw very recently, that doesn't work. People who are angry and deeply angry aren't beaten back by more anger. It just drives everybody into a more violent place. And so it is hard to feel like, there is this grave injustice that has been done, but also that you want to you have to, in order to move on, you have to find some way to forgive and to see the humanity in other people, because if you don't, then, nothing will ever get better. And that's really fucking hard. Like the struggle that I faced to process that rage and, move past it and take the responsibility on your shoulders of dealing with the deep sadness and uncertainty and pain that people around you are feeling. It's harder. It's harder than just being mad. And I'm not great at it just yet. It was way easier to just stay mad and live my own little life. But to move forward and to move forward in a way that will actually create a world, rather than just rejecting the people who, currently control it, is to stand up to what's wrong and to be an emblem of kindness. And I was listening to an interview with Brene, and the author of Sage Warrior. I'm forgetting her name right now. I'm sorry about that. But she was talking about the Sikh community, Sikh. I think I've heard it pronounced Sikh, but she pronounces it Sikh. And she's from that community, so I tend to trust her on that regard. But she wrote this article about how, for ages, this community has had to balance being a sage and a warrior, being a source of wisdom, but also willing to stand up and fight for justice. And for a while, I thought that I had to live in the fight for justice. But, the wisdom that I learned from, specifically this conversation was that, the greatest act of defiance to anyone who is violent or sad or unwell and unhealthy is to move forward with your joy and to hold that anger and that sadness and to see the sadness in them and the things that are pitiable and the things that you truly do wish they could see. And only that way can you actually move forward. And that's, you're talking to a group who has had to fight for their existence many times, whether it was in India, whether it was in Asia, whether it was in the U.S. So anyway, this is a long TABTA. I will probably continue to process how I exist in this world, because the Seventh Valkyrie is a reflection of a political state, and it was a reflection of, at first when I was writing it ages ago, it was a cautionary tale about the nature of how societies and individuals who are well-meaning can be driven to war by things like scarcity and misinformation and lack and greed. And I think it went from being a cautionary tale, or what I thought would be a cautionary tale of the past, into something that is an insight, is happening in some ways in our very real present. So it's, I know sometimes people talk about how they would prefer for their artists not to get political, and what I'm gonna do is, I've never been a person to shy away from politics, because politics is something, it's not just quote unquote politics the way we talked about it and the way people went like, oh, in a bar you shouldn't talk about religion and politics. I think it's a very fundamental, art of understanding the movements of people and power throughout the world. And so the Seventh Valkyrie is inherently political. It's an observation on a fictional political system and with a magical world around it, but it is ultimately a story about the movements of people and the influence that they have on this overarching world that they live in. So, and some things are magnified by the fact that there's incredible magical powers and other spooky monsters and grand, forces beyond their comprehension, but that's not too different from where we live right now, especially for some people. Anyway, this has gone way too long. I love you guys. Probably will continue to think about, how we, myself and the people reading this, and, can continue to think positively and move forward. And, I hope that the Seventh Valkyrie community is a space where we can, feel excited and adventurous and wondrous and, engage with the hard realities. That's something that Seventh Valkyrie, I try to strike that balance of the wonders of life and the joy of living, but also the harsh realities that we deal with. So anyway, thank you guys for listening to this extra long double TABTA. More chapters are coming soon. I just got 3 more back from Big Z from Final Edits. Hopefully we'll be processing those and maybe even getting some audio recorded before I head home for the holidays. So we'll see about all that. In the meantime, love you guys. Take care. Hasta pronto. Te amo. And see you soon.